Hello, you're listening to Research Conversations. This is the first in what will hopefully become a series of podcasts produced by the Department of Politics and International Relations at the University of Leicester, where we talk to academics about their research to try and get some insights about the processes and research methods that they use. Today I'm joined by Dr. Benjamin Lee, who's a research associate here at the Department of Politics and International Relations. Okay, so thank you for agreeing to take part today, Benjamin. The first question I have for you is if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and your research, and in particular the research that we're going to discuss today.
Okay, my name's Benjamin Lee. I'm a research associate at the University of Leicester. Currently I'm involved in a project looking at populism across Europe, 7 different European countries, and educational responses, and so on. Before that, I did a PhD in the Institute for Social Change at the University of Manchester. My PhD dealt with online campaigning by UK political parties during the 2010 UK general election, and I was looking specifically at the constituency level. So today I was going to talk to you a little bit about my PhD and the process that went into developing that.
Okay, so the next question then I guess is why you decided to research this particular topic. So how did the PhD idea come about?
How did I decide to do a PhD, or why did I decide to do it?
A bit of both, I suppose.
Okay. I first decided to do a PhD. It was something that was at the back of my mind after I did my master's degree. I was working in public relations and not amazingly happy there. So I thought it was always something I thought about doing. And then one day after the financial crisis hit, the company I was working for was in a bit of trouble. I got made redundant. So I thought, why not? I'll go and do a PhD. So I sold my car and moved in with my mum and dad, and the rest is history, as they say. As to why I chose to do it about online campaigning, I'd always been very interested in the internet and the World Wide Web. Mm-hmm. This was in about 2007, 2008 that I was first thinking about doing a PhD. So things like Facebook and Twitter were just kind of becoming a thing. They were starting to get used for politics. That was quite interesting. So I really wanted to try and I felt it was important that I did something that I was interested in, that I could sustain over the longer term. So that's kind of why I chose the field. Also I have a background in politics. My master's degree was in political science, so it was a natural connection to put the two together, and think internet, politics, and then sort of campaigning came out of that.
Okay, so often I think what our students find quite difficult in the research process is moving from having a general idea of knowing a sort of topic that you want to be researching, but then refining that down to a specific research question. And that's the same for academics. I think it's a struggle we all have. So how did you move from this general idea of kind of knowing what you wanted to do for your PhD and then moving that to a specific question that framed your thesis?
Very slowly and very painfully at times as well. I think I had the classic problem that probably most first-year PhDs, with a very few exceptions that I know of, have, which is this idea of you're interested in a topic, you're interested in a particular area, but now you've actually got to turn that into a research question. And not only does the research question have to be an original contribution to knowledge, mm-hmm. so something we don't know already, something we need to know, but it also needs to be something that is practical as well. So you've got to be able to develop something which you're going to be able to answer in a meaningful way with the resources you have to hand. Now, when I was doing a PhD, funding for PhDs doesn't grow on trees, particularly for research costs and that kind of thing. So it was no good me saying, I want to go out and survey 5,000 people about whether they've ever seen a political advert online, because I just didn't have the resources to do that.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that kind of impacts on the research question that you choose and how you develop it is your own particular skill set as well. That doesn't mean to say that you shouldn't develop skills as you go along, and don't be afraid to try new things and so on, but for my mind, I always wanted to take a mixed methods approach. Right. So I wanted to find a research question where I could answer it in a quantitative way using sort of secondary data and survey results and so on, but also one that I could answer using qualitative methods as well. I was quite keen to go out and interview people and that kind of thing.
Okay, so once you've got an idea of a specific question that you're working on, did you find that you had to make any compromises during the research process? Or did your methods change from what you originally thought they would be?
Absolutely. The compromises came thick and fast in the beginning. The biggest one, or the biggest difficulty I found, is that because I was using, for part of my analysis, I was using secondary data. So this is survey data collected by other people. And other people were very, very helpful. They're other academics were very helpful. They're very keen to get their data out there in a lot of cases, very happy to kind of get specific questions on surveys. But the problem with survey data is that once the survey's gone out and once all the results have come in, then that's your lot. That's all the information you're going to get. And it's no good if 6 months down the line you think, ooh, really should have asked about that, and it's not in the data set, then you're going to have to find a way around that. In the end, I had to make some quite big compromises. I ended up combining a couple of data sets to try and answer all the questions I was interested in. That took some doing. There was an awful lot of kind of monkeying around involved in that, and so on. The other thing I would strongly advise people is, particularly if you're doing interviews or any kind of research methods that rely on other people to contribute something. I suppose this applies for surveys as well, but it's very, very easy to assume that because you're doing this research and because you're at a university and so on, that people have time to talk to you, that people are going to be very, very willing to get involved, and that's not always the case, particularly as I was. If you're trying to interview politicians during and the immediate aftermath of a campaign especially, they tend to be very, very busy. They tend to you'll get a lot of ignored emails, you'll get a lot of very polite responses saying, no, I'm far too busy, that kind of thing. So you have to be prepared for that. You've got to kind of have in the back of your mind at all times kind of the risks in what you're doing and the unforeseen consequences, the things that you can't see coming, which sounds, it's a bit like known unknowns, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I mean, they are there. They're a real thing. You know, you can plan for the risks that you're going to face.
Brilliant. I think that's some really good advice there. Okay, so obviously when you're writing a PhD, you're aiming the research to a significant degree at your examiners. There are certain kind of criteria that you have to match. But did you have another audience in mind? Did you have a purpose, a kind of wider purpose for your research?
Originally, no. Originally, I was completely focused on the examiners and so on. What became quite clear to me is that, particularly when you do a large piece of research, you have to live with it for quite a long time. And the longer it's around, the more chance it gets picked up. And so it was very strange to me when a paper I'd written for a conference, an academic conference, and I was at a different kind of conference with practitioners. So these are people sort of active in the field of online campaigning, came up to me and said, are you the one that wrote such and such a paper?
Oh, great.
So I suddenly realised that it is worth thinking about not only how do you satisfy the exam requirements and if you can get any sort of publications or academic publications out of it, which are very important, but it's also worth thinking about, you know, are there other ways you can disseminate it? Can you get it summarised on a blog? Can you talk to people about it? Can you send people layman's versions or even the full thing? So you'd be quite surprised sort of just how useful this stuff can be to practitioners and how often it gets picked up.
Which is okay, so my final question then is, do you have any tips for research or writing? If you're tired and you're faced with a blank screen, do you have any tips for how to get motivated?
Motivation's tricky. I generally find that it's not the amount of hours in one session you spend writing, it's the number of times you go back to it. So I tend to find that I work best in very, very short bursts, sort of 40, 50 minutes, 400, 500 words at a time. I'll sit down, I'll do that, and then I'll go away, I'll do something different, and an hour, 2 hours later I'll come back and do it again. So I develop things by accretion, little bits at a time. Now that only really works if you give yourself plenty of time to write.
Yeah.
That's not a strategy that's going to work for you if you've got a day to finish something. So there are times you just have to sit down and power through. But I always find out I write better in short little bursts like that. The other thing I would say, and again, if you've got time, is one of the most beneficial things you can do is after you finish the first draft of something is to put it in a drawer. The screenwriter Graham Linehan always says this. You should put it in a drawer and you should come back to it a week later or a weekend later or however long you've got. And it just gives you a chance to look it over with fresh eyes, and you'll see all kinds of things wrong with it, all kinds of things you wish you'd written differently or so on.
Absolutely.
And that makes, you can make immeasurable improvements in a very short space of time if you just give yourself a little bit of a breather and walk away from it.
I think those are very wise tips. Thank you very much for talking to us today about your research.
Thank you very much for